want me to check it's up on my...
Here they are, except for I don't know how to get back to the screen to see some schedule thing.
You're on.
Yeah. Hello everybody, I just have to find out how to find myself really quick. So please keep chatting amongst yourself. Hey Zach, how do I get back to the screen to be able to see myself?
If you just click the, oh, do you see yourself?
Yeah, because all I'm seeing is the schedule. Oh, excellent. Ooh, this is a totally different way of seeing everybody. Can you guys hear me? Let's see. Still says upcoming. Nope. Ooh, this is a totally different way of seeing everybody. Can you guys hear me? Oh gosh. Okay. Yay. Okay. Yeah. Good. All right. Well, thanks everybody for showing up to my first live. I really hope it's not going to be a dumpster fire because I do want to talk about serious stuff. So yeah, I guess first, I think we all as a group, first of all, hello everybody. It's great to see so many friends. And as a group, I'm going to just take a collective breath. All right, let's get going. Yeah, so I'm going to leave talking about DeOrr up to Chris and Steve because that's really their thing that they were doing. They know the whole what's happened so far with that case, what led to what's been said that led to DeOrr going missing and who's involved in all that. So I'm going to leave all of those kinds of details up to them. So I'm just going to talk about like the location, and that's just from generally knowing what would lie in a mountainous area like Idaho. Yeah, so just so you know, yeah, today I am focusing on DeOrr, who went missing at the Timber Creek campground, which Steve and Chris just went to, and that's in DeOrr, Idaho. And he went missing July 10th, 2015. And so he's been missing 8 years. So one thing to consider when we're looking at options for searching for somebody who's been missing for 8 years, it starts to limit things. If you're looking for somebody after, about 6 months, you're going to have to start thinking about maybe different options. And then definitely after 2 years, you start thinking about different ways you're going to have to look for somebody because just after a while, there's not going to be as much decomposition. I'm going to have to say some things that are kind of uncomfortable sometimes, and I'm really sorry for that. Like, a child's body decomposing is kind of uncomfortable to think of, but it's kind of necessary in order to be able to find them. So yeah, the first thing, so yes, here's the picture of DeOrr, his missing poster and an age progression photo. And yeah, like I said, Steve and Chris are way better at explaining the situation that happened at the campground, so I'll leave that to them. So the first options that we're looking at in searching in a mountainous area is, do we have to search in water? And searching in water, mountainous area, it doesn't, if it's a pond or a lake, it's basically kind of going to be the same, no matter if it's in the mountains or not. Except for the fact that you might have a lot more boulders or sediment in mountainous regions, so you'd have to deal with that. And so I'll go through why that would be a big deal. So the first things are, there's different types of sonar, and I'm not really well versed in sonar, I'm just going to go through a whole long list of different types of data acquisition techniques, and some of them I'm better at explaining than others. And so if you have any questions though, let me know. I can always find out answers if there's any questions that I can't answer about any of the specific technologies that I'm going to go through, but I'm going to explain to you the best I can each type of data acquisition technique. So yeah, the first type, the sonar, there's different types of like the pinpoint kind of sonar that I know of, and that's like somebody's out fishing and looking for fish. And that usually, it comes in a couple different types of frequencies, and I did not pull up a, if you look at the electromagnetic spectrum, if you look up EM spectrum, and if you're getting confused when I talk, you'll see all the different types of wavelengths that I talk about today. It's just like we see visible light, and the visible light on the spectrum is like in the middle. And then when you start to go one direction on the spectrum, like you have your wave, like waves in the ocean. If you spread those waves out, you're going one way on the spectrum, like into different types of electromagnetic waves. Like light waves turn into infrared, or they turn into UV, and they can either the waves either scrunch together or get bigger, but it's all the same idea. Visible light is the same type of wave as what I'm talking about today. It's just it goes through the air differently, so that's why you can acquire things differently with different types of equipment depending on where along the spectrum you're looking. I hope that's making sense. The first time you were live, you were nervous and all over the place. Whew. Yeah, I'm nervous. But it's mostly because I want to talk about a lot of things, and I'm worried about over-explaining things to you guys. So if I'm going a little too much into depth about something and I need to like just back it up, let me know. So with sonar, there, like I said, there's different. So sonar is different in the way that when I talked about visible light and all that, there are ways of detecting, of acquiring data with sound information, and so sonar is actually sound waves. So that's a completely different idea. Let's just say that the sonar is sound waves. It's a completely different idea. Let's go with that for now. Okay, so yeah, with the regular type of sonar like you're using when you're fish finding, that's not really meant to be finding objects in the ground, like drowning victims, like people, shipwrecks, things like that. So yeah, when you're looking at things like the 2D sonar, or there's also this down imaging sonar, it's a very concentrated beam, and this very concentrated beam, the resolution's not high enough to be able to see what you're looking for down there. And because like, look at that image, I wouldn't be able to really find a person pretty good in that. I do love side scan sonar, and that is because I've worked with it, and I got to actually process some data. I got to write my own code to do that, and the image just looks so great. It was at Lulu Lake in Wisconsin, by Eagle, Wisconsin, and there was actually a plume of like mud coming out of the lake underneath the water, and it looked like a volcano. And we ran side, actually that's a subatom profiler. Okay, I'm sorry you guys. I'm seeing this on my TV because I didn't have time to set it up otherwise. This side scan sonar, oh my god. First live, bear with me. So, the side scan sonar is awesome. I've gotten to work with this side scan sonar too. I almost worked with Adventures with Purpose, and then they had a big dumpster fire, and I didn't work with them. And so no matter how bad I do on this live, I won't have a dumpster fire as bad as that. Anyway, so with side scan sonar, you actually get a wider beam, so you actually just image really like a lot more at a time, and you can images in a higher resolution. So the other types of sonar, you are more concentrated, and usually it's less. You get less resolution, so you don't get an image. But with side scan sonar, you can get a really clear image of what's in the ground, like shipwrecks and things like that, or drowning victims. Side scan sonar is used for finding drowning victims a lot. And I never made people mods. I'll figure that out later. Everybody's being awesome, so I don't have to worry about figuring out all that right now. But okay, I need to do mods at some point because people will yell at me for being wrong, I'm sure. Okay, sub-bottom profiler, different than what I was just talking about. So with the sonar, you're only seeing the ground surface under the water. Sub-bottom profiler is awesome. That was Lulu Lake. Sub-bottom profiler, I got to image, and not gonna be great because with the sub-bottom profiler, you see into the ground, but you're gonna have to have a high resolution if you're gonna look for a child. And so even though sub-bottom profilers would be awesome for imaging things, like what you're seeing here is like the water, and then I think that's like the ground surface, and then you have another, this is full of that layer of, I think that's ash it says, and then you have a different layer started here, and so you're looking into the ground, and you got your water up here before you hit the ground, and so your boat is up here, and this isn't actually processed very well. I could process this a lot better. But anyway, that's besides the point. Still, the resolution wouldn't be high enough. So the best thing you could use is, I'm not really good at knowing the newer technologies with sonar. So the more concentrated sonar beams could probably work because they would tell you. I just don't think that there would be a good resolution for that. But I do think that the side scan sonar would be a good thing to use if if the person you're looking for, like DeOrr, would be right on the under the water, right on the ground surface, because you can't see it into the ground with sonar unless you're using a sub-bottom profiler. I think that thank you everybody for being so sweet so far. I should read these things out loud. How deep in the ground can it pick things up? So the sub-bottom profiler, I imaged an entire mud volcano. So I can't remember how deep that was. You're looking at, I think, I could be completely wrong, but 15 meters. So 15 times 3 for feet. But it all depends on what frequency you're using. If you're using a higher frequency radar, anything that's a higher frequency will give you really good resolution. Anything that's lower frequency, you won't be able to see as well, but it'll go deeper. And I can do a whole thing on why that exists at some point, because that's actually kind of an in-depth idea, but just know that depending on what type of system you use, you could pick up very detailed things very close to the surface, but you wouldn't see as deep. And if you wanted to see deeper, like if you wanted to see where the bedrock started underneath the lake, you could see that with a lower frequency, but you wouldn't be able to see like a child near the surface kind of thing. And so it's really, do you want to see deep or do you want to see detail near the surface? And so I think that in DeOrr's case, if you could see into the water and right on the surface of the ground under the water, if there was any information about like either if there was him or any other evidence, it'd be side scan would be great to use, I think. Otherwise, I think the best thing you can do, I had a Lawrence 5000 back in the day, and I would read bottom of the lake while fishing at 100. Can't imagine what you have. Oh my god, I don't have anything. A lot of this equipment came when I worked for the state of Wisconsin, and I have my ERI, and I have used GPR since then, but a lot of the things that I've had experience with that I'll be talking about is a couple of years behind, but that's okay. Like, one of the pieces of equipment, the people still have bell bottoms on in the manual, so it really some of this equipment really doesn't change over the years. So I'm pretty confident in some of it, but I know sonar is getting a lot better, so that's the only one I'm a little nervous about talking about. But all I know is I don't know if there is a good way of imaging with a sonar or sub-bottom profiler after 8 years for a small child. And it's tough because you want to be like, well, maybe, but it's like, I don't know. And so that's kind of the not great part about doing this job, is sometimes the options are kind of limited, especially when there's children. So magnet fishing, and I'm going to be hopefully going with Christina, and I actually don't know how to pronounce the DI for DDiz. I think you guys are awesome, and I think you are awesome, and I want to go magnet fishing with you, and I'm taking Christina and we're going to go magnet fishing, and it's going to be awesome. And so that's the only thing I think would work really well in the lake, but I think it could work really, really, really well in the lake for DeOrr. If you think DeOrr has been in the lake, oh no, ever since I started questioning how to pronounce people's names, the chat stopped, and now I'm panicking. Oh my god, top chat. Why are you doing that to me even here? Okay, now I'm live chat. Sweet 8 pound, 6 ounce baby Jesus. Okay. So yes, magnet fishing I think is the only option really that would be good for the lake for DeOrr, but I think it actually would be really good because he'd probably have oh my god, you need to help brothers in Oregon find some interesting objects. Don't get me started with that because I did try to get a hold of them and I never got anything back from them. So yes, magnet fishing. He's gonna probably have zippers or buttons or something, and it wouldn't just pick up things like right at the surface. There'd be sediment and stuff, and I'm sure the magnet would kind of drag into all that. And so if he is under a little bit of sediment, or if any evidence is under a little bit of sediment, I really feel like you could probably pull up something like a button or a zipper or something. So I really think that I'm not sure if they did magnet fishing or not. There was some talk about it, but I'm not sure what they had time for. But I'm glad that if they did do some sonar there, I'd love to see how that turned out, because it is 8 years is kind of a long time, but it's not that long. But in a mountainous region, you're going to get a lot of sediment dumped into that lake, and you're going to get a lot of rocks dumped into that lake, and I'm not sure what the sediment rate in that lake is. Yeah, so why am I looking at my notes when I have my notes in a PowerPoint? Oh, I never got a picture of scuba diving. Also a good idea, just to go check it out visually, would be scuba diving. Yeah, so that's like my lake options. And then I'm going to go more ground, because I didn't do too much lake stuff. Like, really the only thing I did with water when I worked in Wisconsin, like on lakes, that type of water, not like hydrology, but like actual bodies of water, was the sub-bottom profiler. So maybe anybody got questions about things so far with the water stuff that is just so confusing that you won't even be able to continue until I explain myself. And hello to everybody that's here. I don't know how long it takes me to see the chat stuff. I feel like it might be slightly delayed, but maybe it's not. Yes, the Money Pit, Oak Island. They named that right. They sure did, didn't they? It is my goal to work independently with my own business or to go back for work for the government or the private sector. I have my own business. It's Strife Flynn Geophysics. I do consulting. I get hired by different public and private individuals or organizations or groups. I've worked for privately for people who own old cemeteries, and I currently have like a 10-year or more contract with a city nearby to work on their cemetery, and it gets a little slow sometimes, but when I work I have a lot, and but yeah, so I have my own business, and that's mostly just because I don't like filling out forms and having to sit and you had to do all these things about, I'm never going to harass anybody at work. I don't want to have to sit there and check off some boxes saying I'm a good person, because I am. And I just couldn't sit in front of a computer and do all that kind of stuff. The administrative stuff was just driving me crazy. So it'd be hard for me to go back to that. So yes. Oh, where's my... Yeah, so I do like working with, like the city that I work with right now, that I'm going to be working with for a while. They're awesome. They're great. And they care a lot about the cemetery, because they've only had the cemetery like under them in the city for like 20 years. And it's been under like different organizations and like privately for a while. And there's some issues with like, they want to make sure their records are right. And also they expanded the road a little bit around it, and they moved the fence. And there's some issues with people not being within the cemetery anymore, and things being placed where people are, and the city is very upset about that, and so we are trying to fix that. And so I really like the city that I'm working for. They really care. Yeah, let's see. Oh, well, Mustang is leaving. Bye. The name of my business is Strife Flynn Geophysics. So it's my last name, which is Streiff, and then Flynn, Flynn, and Geophysics. How you spell geophysics? Geophysics. But you can actually look me up in erisurveys.com. So that's just erisurveys.com, and that's my page. Yeah, so next. You ever get to work on an Indian reservation or fossil hunting? I did not get to go to any of the Native American projects in Wisconsin, but they did image over a mound. It wasn't a burial mound. I'm not sure what they're called when they don't think they're burial mounds, but they're like they're religious mounds that I can't remember what. I don't think it was a snake. I can't remember what they imaged over, but they imaged over a mound of significance, and because the specific reservation, and also everybody that was curious wanted to know if there was something buried like in the heart of the animal that the mound was created looking like, and I didn't get to do that because I wasn't there at the time, but that would have been really cool because like with the ERI you don't damage anything, so but I haven't gotten to. And our fossil hunting in Wisconsin was little tiny shells from the Ordovician period, and I don't really, you just have to look along like a road and you'll find a million of those, so your family chose cremation when governments were tearing up cemeteries. Yeah. I've also done some work. Christina and I did work up by her in a place that they said they moved graves when they put up the water tower, and there's another cemetery there, and there was people under the road and stuff, and sometimes they aren't as respectful as they should be with people, and that's why I'm here to right the wrongs of the people who have been disrespectful in the past. My ex-brother-in-law family lost him, cemetery can't find him. Oh my God. That's the only message I saw about that situation, and I am sorry to read that. How likely is it that there would be deep holes in the water at the bottom? I don't know in this area exactly what could cause a deep hole. You could have some for various reasons, like if there had been a landslide, like a whole bunch of debris went in and there was just not anything that filled in a certain area, you could have a deep hole there, but that wouldn't be really in the ground, that would be just within the debris in the water. Or you could have a fracture in the ground, like the rock could be broken pretty significantly in a certain area and you could get a hole there, but I think after this time it's not an active, that area isn't really super seismically active in that regard, so you wouldn't really, I think, you'd have a lot of sediment filling everything in, so I don't think that there would be too many big holes there for any reason. Okay. Yeah, in Wisconsin you never would have thought. Yeah, me too, right? But everywhere's got like at least one guy, you gotta watch out for. Well, I think Milwaukee in like the early 90s kind of taught us that. What is this lovely lady's name again? I'm old and forgot. Is that me? Are you talking about me? Thank you. Yes, it is Carolyn. So then the next thing is ground penetrating radar. This was a great picture I found today. It shows one of the problems actually with ground penetrating radar. The people that look like they're mowing the yard that are actually taking data, there's a couple issues. First off, whether you're in the mountains or not, that happen when you get GPR data. One is they say they can't save it. If you try to talk to a technician, he'll swear up and down he can't save that data, but he can. Because then you take that data out and you process it. And when you process GPR data, it can become much clearer and it can look pretty good. I have some old data, but I couldn't find my hard drive that had that on there. But so as you can see, there's different issues with GPR data. Like if you had a ball of metal in the ground, which they actually put metal into the ground before a survey starts to be able to calibrate the equipment well. They do that sometimes if you don't know the ground very well. But as you pass over, as you mow the yard over that, you're sending out a radio wave. And so as that radio wave goes into the ground, it, like as you travel along like this, it bounces off the object and then it keeps bouncing off the object as you pass over it. And so the object is actually here, but it ends up having a hyperbola, and that's called an artifact when it looks like there's something there, but it's not. How does an area with large and small rocks in and above the ground, does it make this much harder to locate a body? Yes. Chris, yes, that is the point. That's one of the main points I'm getting at. I'm going to be getting at today. In my problem section, conclusion section of my note sheet, I actually have that as my first point. Yes, boulders and rocks are going to be in a search for DeOrr the hardest and worst thing that you have to deal with, because if this was a rock in the ground and you were searching for DeOrr, you would see something that looks like this. If this was a child in something, or just like the child, the child might not even show up, but if the child was in something, it would look a lot like this. So if this was a rock, it would look like this. If it was a child in something, it would look like this. So with a place that's got a lot of rocks in the ground, you're going to get a lot of that. So GPR is not practical here. And it's not practical in a couple of different ways too. In fact, there's a lot of trees in some areas, and the radio wave doesn't just go into the ground. It also gets sent into the sky. And so, like, you're imaging the ground, but you're also sending the radio wave into the sky, and that actually will show up in your data as different artifacts that aren't real. And so you can actually process those out so you can see the data better, but a lot of people don't. They just walk over things and flag stuff, and they don't save the data and actually process it, which is a big problem they have, I think. Yeah, and you have to have flat ground, because bumping GPR along the ground will only give you things that look like the ripples up there. So here you go. Here's some GPR data. This is why it's not going to work in the mountains very well. Maybe in a field where there's a lot of sediment laid down and a lot of layering of sediment. If you have a field you're looking at, maybe, actually, if there's like a large field area and you've had a lot of sediment laid down, you could have a lot of, what's really nice is the horizontal lines of the soil when it's laid down. You can see when there's things in the ground. What does that say? It's in yellow. Oh my god, and this is too small on my thing. A gas main, a water main, and utility something, or a rock, or I can't read that word. Anyway, yeah, so look at that. You get a lot of those hyperbola things, and you have to, you kind of have to know what you're looking for. I will tell you that one of my things I was considering doing for my PhD is GPR waveform analysis, because I did look at the data that came out of seismic data to image things better. And I wanted to look at the data that comes out of the GPR equipment and actually image that. You can get a lot more information out of GPR data than what you think you can. And yeah, I don't want to go too far into it, but I have been asked to critique and look at a lot of presentations at big conferences because people have inferred things in data that if you look at the actual data itself, like it's white right here in this water main, and it's got like the two black things. So depending on the source waveform that went into this, like the radio wave that went into it, depending on how that looked, this could be a positive, like a crest in a wave. So like when you're at the beach, when the wave is high, it could look like that, or it could be a trough. So it could actually be like a low spot in the data, because it's actually, the information actually comes down looking like this, and it's put together in an image. Like it's sewn together like or crocheted together. So you actually have a waveform that comes down. So, and then it's like created into an image. And so this is actually the highest point on this wave that came down. and you can get a lot of information about that, and people don't do that. But they should, and that's what my entire thesis at Madison was. And that's what I would probably do another thesis on. I didn't stay at Madison to do a PhD because I was considering actually being a professor, and I kind of wanted to be one at Madison, and they told me to go away in order to come back. And then I decided I never want to go back to school. So anyway, that worked out for everybody. No, they like me, I swear. I think. All right. Now, you guys may never have heard about electrical resistivity imaging, and I really haven't either. But actually, so that's the ERI is the first thing I worked with when I worked for the survey in Madison. And am I mumbling too much for everybody, or is everybody fine with how since this is the first live, I will maybe ask some questions just to make sure that everybody can better hear me and understand me, because I mumble a lot. I will admit this. So it's seeing the water in the pipe. It's actually seeing the metal. It's bouncing off the metal. Yeah, so, oh good, Chris remembers this, excellent. So, yeah, and so the same thing, like, I'll mention graves really quick with the GPR because I just have Copper Horse is interested in graves, and so I don't want to like miss saying anything about that, but you're not going to see really an object in the ground after a period of time unless it's a volt or a casket. Caskets won't show up as bright. Volts will show up pretty bright. But usually you're not looking for a volt. But you'll get, like, here's a good example. Like, if they've dug recently, you're not going to see anything in the ground. Like, your horizontal layering of your ground goes away, and it just becomes a mishmash. It just becomes, like, mashed potatoes right there. And that means that the ground's been disturbed there. And that's how they find graves with GPR, is they usually don't look for an object. They usually look for disturbed ground. And that's why sometimes when geophysicists never say for certain that, like, the grave is here, because we don't want to say that, and then there's not a grave there because it was just like somebody dug something up once a long time ago, and you really can't tell if the reason they dug into the ground was the grave or not. And every type of data acquisition method has its pros and cons in every type. Also, it has the issue with being non-unique, where it could be the thing you're looking for, but it could also not be the thing you're looking for because it could be these other things. Or it could be the thing you're looking for, but in a landscape that you may not be familiar with, you may not want to really take the risk of saying 100% on that. Yeah, so ERI now. So ERI would be able to tell the difference between a person that's buried, and it would be able to tell the difference between a rock and that person that's buried. It also would be, you'd have disturbed ground, and in an area like this where somebody would have had to dig out a bit of ground and put some more on top, like, it'd be different ground. So you would see you'd see a different signature, but in a landscape that's already so variable, because there's a lot of different erosion going on in different places, like large scale and small scale, and there's a lot of movement of the soil and sediment, and there's just a lot of soil being created from the vegetation that dies in the fall and comes back up, and all the leaves that come down. There's just going to be so much more soil created, and so you're already dumping so much new information in a certain area with new sediment and erosion that's moving things around, and all the soil that's being created. you're going to see a lot of variation in the mountains, and you'd have to really pinpoint an area to use electrical resistivity, because it is more of it. ERI works with GPR really well, because GPR can find things that look interesting in the ground, and ERI can go over that area and say if it has the qualities of the thing you're looking for. So really the best thing you could do in a ground search, I don't know if it'd be the mountains would be great, because the GPR would have to go over rocky ground, but in general, the way that GPR and ERI complements itself, by GPR goes out and finds it and ERI confirms it, that's like the best thing. But you'd have to really have an area conducive to dragging this thing over the ground and know that it's either going to be rocky ground or not in the first place. So ERI would not work unless there was an area you really wanted to look at, which is bad. If the ground has more moisture, will it help the image? Water actually, radio waves attenuate, they disappear in the ground very quickly in water. You don't actually get to see into the ground very far, especially if you have, like in a cemetery, if the water table is at like 4 or 6 feet, you can't really find graves that well, because it'll bounce, like the reflection of the radio wave bounces off the water table, and then it doesn't really image below it, and so you're pretty much like done if the water table is really high. And so with GPR, if it's really wet, in a lot of cases it won't work. And with ERI, it's the difference in the ground when there's a water table. It is not, the water table usually doesn't impact it unless you're doing a very detailed near surface type of survey, and in that case it would be important information to know anyway, because it would be saturating the ground layers that you're looking at. But water is great for electricity. That's why they tell you to get out of the lake when it's lightning. So the water is great in most cases for electrical resistivity imaging, but when you're looking at ground that's going to be variable because of, like, when you just look out, like in these pictures on Google Maps of this campsite that I looked at, there was just so much going on the ground and around the whole area. It was just, I don't think that it would matter if the ground was wet or dry in this case, because you wouldn't be able to, you'd see so many things that you could say, well, that could be a burial. There'd be, every survey line would have something that you would question if it was or wasn't, and it's just not practical, I think, in that way. I don't know if you guys can see this. I tried. I'll show this better to you guys in a different video completely. This is the summer part of that cemetery that I was working with, and so the big gray boxes are the names of the people. I left their birth and death years there, but I took out the names of the people because I just, make it hard for you guys to identify, I guess, the cemetery, and also, a little respect for them. But so I have where we know there's graves where, really can't be nothing else. And then there's it could be a grave, but it could be other things. And so that's with ERI. So this is one of the lines that created that image, because I did my survey lines like this. And this is one of them that created it. And so you can see the burials here. Some of them are older and towards the end of the line, so they're harder to see. you can always chop out a bunch of this information down here that is unimportant and just get a better image. But you're looking for something like that, and that's in an ideal case where they're like buried in something, and those are adults, and you're gonna see a lot of things in a mountainous region that look like this that are just gonna be rocks and soil differences, and so it's really not practical, I think, to use the ERI unless you want to look closer at an area of the ground. So this is stuff is actually, the image I'm showing you right now is actually one of the images I did this summer for the cemetery. The EM31. This thing is great too. With some of the ground penetrating equipment, I could play music for the gophers. Something they wouldn't like. If I wonder what kind of music gophers enjoy. It is radio waves. Oh my god, now you got me thinking about... Anyway, don't get me started on this. I have to stay focused. I'm really bad at getting off track when I talk about this stuff. So terrain conductivity works in the same way. When you're looking at resistivity, in order to get a conductivity value, like an actual calculation, you just do 1 divide, like for conductivity, it's just the inverse, so it's just 1 divided by resistivity is the conductivity. They complement each other well. So, in the way that they're basically the same. I think that one, is it really that long, or is this the EM38? I think this might be the 38, this might be the 31. I had a high schooler walk that thing around all summer one year. He was a good kid. He climbed up the side of, we climbed up the side of a bunch of quarry walls in order to get to the top of these fields, because we wanted to use the quarry wall in order to know what the ground looked like and compare it to the to ERI data. And we also used the EM31 at those spots to compare EM31 data to ERI data to the actual image. And it's good memories to think of that high schooler walking around with that thing. Because he looked like the guys who walk with the pole on when they're walking the tightrope. And this is the equipment that is so old, it has the people in bell bottoms in the manual. And it's science is science, whether you figured it out a long time ago or not. And so if it's not broken, don't fix it. So what is actually happening here is you have a transmitter and a receiver, and you have a voltage, and if you have a voltage, if you have like a current going this way, that right hand rule, if you have the current going in the direction your thumb is moving, you have like a round magnetic field that's created around it. So current this way, magnetic field around it, and that's the whole. That's the right hand rule is what is really happening here. You create a voltage, you have a current, and that creates a magnetic field that goes into the ground, creates a voltage, creates as it passes through the ground, creates a magnetic field, and you just see the change in that final voltage from that final magnetic field up here. And you can get 2 data points at each place by how you actually position this thing one way, and then if you flip the box the other way. I had bruises all up and down my body from this thing one summer because that box, I'm just short enough that it just slammed into my legs when I had to tilt it. But if you tilt it, you can get a second data point just because of how the dipoles are working. And yeah, so you get 1 data point right there. Then you can get one a little bit deeper. And that's it, and then you walk. They actually have new ones, I guess, that you can just walk along and it'll take data as you go, and it does the GPS of that point, and you can just get conductivity data, but it's just at 1 depth, and then you can go a little bit deeper if you pass over it again. And so you can tell there's a change in the conductivity of the ground. Not useful here. Whoops. Or not useful in the mountains. I can't see how that would be useful in the mountains because all you'd see is rocks. Uh, does anybody have questions before we go into... Wait, how far am I in my list? Oh. Wait, am I almost done with my thing? Because I have a really cool slide at the end. Does anybody have questions yet? I hope everybody's having a good time. It looks like there's a lot of emojis, so that makes me happy. Because I want everybody to just be comfortable, have a good time. This really feels like a great community that Steve and Chris have created, and I want to steal it. I'm going to steal their community, and I'm never giving it back. Or we could share. I'm not sure. Okay. Does anybody have a problem with anything I've said? Like, you could have a problem with the sonar, because I'm not really great at that right now. So you need a vehicle larger than a GeoMetro to transport that thing? I totally know what GeoMetros look like. And no, actually you have to put it together in the field. It's awful. It's a really bad experience. All the equipment I've ever used, even we used an 80 megahertz antenna for our GPRs because we needed to see really far into the ground, so we needed the lowest frequency we had, and that actually looks like a snowplow, but like if you filled in the scoopy part of the snowplow with metal. I actually opened that up once because me and the other geophysicist wanted to see what it looked like inside. It's boring. It's just copper wires, and but even that fits in the truck. You just gotta take it out of the truck and then drag it along behind the truck. Everything can be broken down, basically. Yeah, so, if everybody's okay. Thermal and infrared. I guess before that, I'm just gonna say, I think that visual, like just walking around, like, visual inspection of the ground is a really good way of looking for him here, because it'll probably be a depression that doesn't look natural, because they'll have moved rocks and they'll have messed with the soil a bit. So you're not just going to have a depression, because they didn't come back to fill in where the sediments or where the soil settled after they filled in, if they buried him. I don't know how. I'm just making an assumption here. And the if and who. I'm just playing off the idea that he was buried here. I'm not making. Nobody come back at me on this. Anyway, so if someone happened to place someone in the ground, there'd become a depression there. You'd have to come back and fill the ground up. And this could create, because of the soil differences over time. And just messing with things in the ground that's already been established, you could get differences in vegetation and in vegetation and things like lichen. So that like the stuff on rocks that kind of looks like moss, but it's harder. Like if you pick at it, it's really kind of a little difficult to get off. That's lichen, and there's actually not just research into, but they use it as a method of determining when things have been moved, because if a rock that had lichen on it is disturbed, it's going to have younger lichen, and they know how long it takes lichen to grow, like really well. This is a huge research area, which is very random to me, but like things like if visually, if you see an area that's got lichen that looks different than other lichen on rocks, like, why is that? Did somebody walk there and they disturbed it? It's usually a little harder to remove lichen than just stepping on it. But if you picked up a rock and, like, or a whole bunch of little rocks and just toss them aside and then put them back down, like, you're going to probably have put them down in a different way than they were, and the lichen's going to be younger. And so looking at things like that and just vegetation differences from also uncomfortable to say, but the decomposition of a body will put different nutrients in the ground, and you'll get different vegetation at those places. And so if it's new enough, like I think 8 years is new enough to be able to look at areas in the ground that could have slight depressions that have different vegetation in it. I really think that at this point 8 years is soon enough to be able to go out and do that. So I cannot stress enough that lichen may be hard to, like lichen age may be difficult to look at in this kind of environment because it's a campsite and there's people doing lots of weird things when they're out camping, and I don't know. I don't know how much lichen would be there. It's actually around more places than you think. But I think really people should look there. I think the science of looking at vegetation differences when you bury bodies, I think that there should be a lot more work done on that, and I think that Tennessee is doing a little bit of that. But and I'm also looking at my lap. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude. And then soil probes might be kind of hard to do. I know that we brought the probes for Amber's case, and it's hard. We also brought up probes at the cemetery I work at too, because really, if it was me and it was either I'm going to be in the ground and nobody's going to know I'm here, or I'm going to be hit with a metal stick, I'd rather be hit by a metal stick, and have them find me. And I'd rather find somebody than leave them there. And if a metal stick is the way I'm going to have to do it, I guess that's how it's going to have to be done. And I hate that sometimes it gets to that point where you got to start shoving sticks into the ground. But piano wire is also a thing I've just learned that people use to do this. I did not know piano wire was a thing people use to stick in the ground. But I don't know what erosion looks like in this area. How much soil and how much sediment is placed in certain areas. Sticking something into the ground. I mean, if you stick a probe into the ground and the soil slides completely different than in other places, if it's really soft, it's something to check out. But also here, you're just probably gonna hit rocks. But if you don't hit rocks, then why are you not hitting rocks? But I feel like this would be a really shallow, if anybody's in the ground here, it'd have to be really shallow because of the rocks. And at that point, maybe erosion has already happened at that place, and in that case, erosion could be beneficial in the way that it could actually move things up on the ground for you to just find. And I think that if anybody like DeOrr was placed in the ground here, it would have had to be shallow, and I think erosion will eventually lead to finding him. Unless he's just in the wrong place where erosion would just put a whole bunch of sediment on top of him, but I don't think anybody would be that smart. I mean, obviously, whoever did this wasn't smart. They were, in fact, evil. Okay, so thermal. This is interesting. Does high elevation cause any issues with GPR, ERI, or any sensors? No. Not that I thought of. I didn't ever think of this before. So now I'm going to have to think about this, but I don't think I don't think so, because the source and receivers are all of this equipment is kind of the source and receivers of these equipment, or it's such a it covers such a small area that in the grand scheme of things, I don't think outside influences the elevation or anything else would really affect, especially not URI, and I don't think radio waves would be affected by it at all, especially into the ground. So no, I don't think that should affect it. I don't really know what if elevation has any effect on thermal. I don't think so. Why do you have me thinking about this? Okay, I will think about it, but I don't think so at all. The area where DeOrr disappeared is very high elevation, over 8,000 feet. I think vegetation would grow and change slowly. Okay. Yeah, I'm from Wisconsin, so I just kind of look at, even though when you think like of like vegetation growing and changing slowly, like I'm really thinking like leaves falling down. But I guess I don't know what their leaf situation is in the fall and all that, and I guess I don't know how in higher elevations things grow. So you might not get a whole bunch of soil being put down, but and I'm not really sure the sediment rates or the erosion rates there, and so yes, thank you for bringing that up, because I guess sometimes I think when I think of vegetation, it would be more of a Wisconsin situation, and that is not how everywhere is. So yeah. You have to get different generators to work in high altitudes. Really? This is the problem with Wisconsin. Like, we're so flat and low and boring that I have to learn these things sometimes. So I will look into this. For sure. The pressure, I guess, for generators. In the desert south of here, there are shallow sinkholes because of ground squirrel activity. Aw, poor little guys. Ground squirrels. Creating havoc. I can do sinkholes too. I can do a thing on sinkholes sometime, because I did image sinkholes in Wisconsin. They are not like sinkholes in Florida, which I would love to image sometime. Okay. So, infrared. This is actually imaging leaking from a water pipe. So when they said that this was leaking from a water pipe, I'm assuming that this is the leaking, because the water, when the ground is wet, it's just gonna, if it's warm outside, it's gonna be colder where it's leaking. So if you have a depression in the ground where somebody was placed, or you have differences in soil, if you look either after it rains, or if you look at the end of the day, maybe when it starts to cool off, after it rains is the best thing. That's why they were so happy during this terrible manhunt when it rained after it was so warm outside, because it cooled the ground out, so you could see the guy's body heat against the area around him, because now the rain had cooled it off. So the water on the ground, if you start to like look at depressions, you're going to pool that water in there. It'll be colder and than the other areas around it, and so I think thermal could be used here if you're looking for areas that could have depression. Different, like the soil isn't as compact yet after 8 years, and so the soil would be a little bit different. It would radiate heat differently, and I think you could actually maybe use thermal here to look at the ground after a rain, or after the ground cools off. And I have a really cool thing. Yes, there it is. This is my final slide, and I am so proud of myself, because I was sitting in a van spitting out ideas, and I came up with a new way of imaging for bedrock using thermal, because the soil, the thickness of the soil above the bedrock would cool off differently at the end of the day, or after it rains. You would have a different heat signature where the soil is thicker and the bedrock is deeper than where the bedrock is shallower and there's less soil. And I was talking about that, and then I moved, and they remembered that I was the one that came up with that. So I can always share the link to the article about this new data acquisition method using thermal on drones that I thought up. And I first started my conversation about it in a van, saying, well, if we, because like that bedrock is so variable up in Kewaunee County, Wisconsin, but we have a lot of places where we know the bedrock depth, and so if we can use the cooling off rate too of the ground, if we know the bedrock in some areas, we have all this known information, and we can tell how fast that ground cools off, and and how it looks compared to other areas where we know the ground, the bedrock depth and all that. We can definitely create a calculation for when we're just looking at thermal data, what the different temperatures and temperature differences in the landscape. When you're looking at the thermal through the drone, you should be able to tell the bedrock depth compared to the knowns of the places we don't know. And you can see like the fractures in the ground and all that from that. And that is one of my highlights. And this might have a good question because I started reminiscing. Decomposition occurs faster at higher elevations. Never considered this before. Huh. Yeah, I had never had to really start considering, like, I didn't go into geophysics thinking about looking for missing people and stuff. And so if anybody has information that could be useful for me, that would be great, because I really went into this with I come from geophysics and physics. Like, I came from working on earthquakes and tsunamis into near surface. So I really did this because it's like I loved geology and I loved physics. So I never got into this doing this because I knew anything about the decomposition or was interested in dead bodies. And so I've been learning about this as I go, what the signature of people look like in the ground, and what happens to people in the ground is important to understand in different landscapes, because then you can know what you're specifically looking for in the data. Instead of just looking for anomalous areas, it's best to have kind of an idea of what you think has been happening in the ground, because that'll even be able to pinpoint on your data even better which anomalies are more impressive to you than others. So I do believe that is my last slide, because I wanted to end on my thermal technique, because it's not like I created a technique so like I wanted to show it off to you guys. It's just like they remembered me when they wrote this article, and that just made me so happy, because I like those guys and I'm glad they still thought of me. Oh yeah, no, the thermal part, I have so much more to say. If you guys wanted me to talk about the thermal and the ground surveillance radar really quick, I could do that about the however you pronounce his name, it doesn't matter, about the guy that they were looking for. I was looking at some studies on child behavior, toddlers, studies on child play outdoors. Studies say toddlers really like water. Yeah. So, for whatever could have happened to DeOrr or any other search for a child, I think that, especially if you think water could be a place you should look, obviously look right away there, because those techniques to look in water can be a little bit harder, just because of what type of source to receiver information you can obtain with different methods. Water is really a place that time is of the essence. I love geology. I started majoring in that for college, then had to move for a family thing. Sorry I had to move. Yeah, geology. You can all like. I like that you can go to different parks and stuff and get books on that stuff and read maps, and I really learned a lot just from being able to go out and explore. And so school was good, but you really got to go out and see the world in order to actually learn it. So I will, Anna, teach us everything you can, please, about the terrible guy that we were looking for, kind of thing, because I can definitely just go over that really quick. I had a feeling that he fell in the water. Oh, yeah. I'm glad that they were looking in the water, and we'll see what Chris and Steve have to say about that. They first searched the creek. They knew the danger of water. Yeah. So with this terrible guy, because I was thinking about actually also making this to talk about a couple of the techniques that they were using to search for this guy, but I didn't want to put DeOrr and a terrible, awful demon person in the same presentation slides, but I'll definitely just say that I heard a lot of people. I think they got confused when they heard GSR because they heard the radar, and a lot of people started asking about GPR to different streamers. And ground penetrating radar wouldn't have been useful in a search for a moving target. And GPR's real thing that it's used for is the objects in the ground, non-moving objects. And so if they needed to map the tunnel system, like at Longwood Gardens, if they didn't know where all the tunnels were and they thought he was in the tunnels, then they would have brought in GPR for sure to map where the tunnels were. But if they thought he was in the tunnels, and they should have already known at Longwood Gardens where the tunnels were, because they just did a major upgrade there of the water system and out there. And so all these tunnels, they knew where they were. If they thought he was in there, they would put geophones on the ground or they just would have gone in. But if they really wanted to be safe and know exactly where he was, they would have put geophones on the ground. So they would have put the sensors on the surface of the ground above where these tunnels were, and they would have waited for movement in the tunnel to be rippled out into these geophones, and then you could have seen where he moved by what the geophones were collecting, and then you could know where he was that way. And so it really only to map tunnels. There were some other tunnels and ditches and stuff that they didn't really know where things were, but yeah, it wouldn't have been practical unless you were looking for the location of a tunnel or something in the ground. Or like if he buried himself, if he just dug himself a grave. I was talking about like, well, they could have brought GPR, and if they thought he just like gave up and dug himself a grave and then buried himself. But then you should be able to see that on the ground surface. You don't need GPR for that. Do you think it is possible for a child falling in water? Is it possible for a toddler to float under a log or something instead of floating to the top? Yeah, so from what I understand, because I do want to learn more about what happens to people when they get buried, when they fall in water, things like that. It's horrible, but like if you want to find somebody, you're gonna have to know how to find them, and so I'd learn how to do that. And so I don't want to say specifics about like things that happen to bodies more than I know, but I'm sure that it's possible for somebody to get stuck under a log, and so so they wouldn't, after a couple of days when the gases build up and these people should come to the top of like a lake or something, they could get stuck on something. But I think that it's more likely with currents and lakes and rivers and stuff that it'd be less likely, I think, for somebody to get stuck. But that is only my guess. But it could. I can't see why it wouldn't happen, especially with a small child. Yeah. So, and then the ground surveillance radar is my impression is that it was the X band of the microwave part of the spectrum. So we're not looking at radio wave. We can't send out radio waves from an antenna and receive that information and know that we're going to pick up a person. The radio waves are actually too big that an entire wavelength it would pass, and it just wouldn't reflect off a person. And so you have to use a shorter wavelength that has the opportunity to actually bounce off the person. And so that a really good wavelength to see a person is the X band in the microwave part of the spectrum, and because that can go really far, but it also is the frequency is high enough to see a person. And so I think that the ground surveillance radar was X band in the microwave, and it would be used like, I heard a lot of people, or I saw a lot of information that these surveillance systems work with like the Doppler effect, which makes sense. Like when you're standing next to a road and you have an ambulance coming at you and it sounds like it's getting higher pitch as it's coming towards you, it's because each time it sends out, like the wave gets sent out, that crest of that wave, since they're moving forward, is actually moved forward a little bit more, and so you actually bunch it up, so you actually make the frequency a little bit higher because it's like pushing, it looks like it's pushing it closer together, and that's why it's higher pitch. And then when the ambulance is leaving you, the pitch is lower because each time that waveform creates a crest, your crest is started just a little further away, and so that's why it's the waveform is longer, so it sounds lower in pitch. And so if you're looking at the change in the waveform with a moving object, that's what they're doing. They're looking at the change in the waveform of this microwave to see a moving object like a person, and that's what I think was used. I do not know because it was very hard to find information about this. But if anybody can point me in the direction of like specifically which instrument that what looked like a big radar system on like a mast was on the back of that truck, that'd be really cool to find out exactly what they used. But I'm under the impression that that was the radar they were talking about. I don't think GPR was ever considered. And when it comes to thermal stuff, night vision is not thermal. Night vision relies on visual light. You need to have some light source like the moon or street lights or something for night vision to work, because it actually just it amplifies the visual spectrum. And so night vision in pitch dark would not work. And you can't see through things like smoke and fog and things as well at all with night vision. In fact, it can be worse because you're just amplifying that reflected and refracted light even more. And so night vision in bad weather, low light, the guys on the ground when they're walking around in the dark with the ambient light around them works great. But from like the sky, then if they're saying night vision with the helicopters or the drone, probably thermal and not night vision. And the thermal, so last night when they were looking in that field for that guy and they were tracking him with the thermal, it was going really well. Then they had to leave because it was thundering and lightning and raining, and they couldn't have I think it was a drone. I'm not sure if it was a drone or a helicopter. Somebody with thermal, they had to go in, and that's where we all thought they lost him at first last night until a lot later. But that was thermal, but the thermal is so hard because if the guy is surrounded in weeds, the thermal is going to pick up information and create an image just like the visual light part of the spectrum. Like a normal picture, like me right now, I'm normal. This is my example of a normal picture. I'm sorry. So just a waveform that's slightly longer than visual light, it would be thermal, slightly longer. Don't quote me on that because I'm live. But you're picking up the information the same way visually, only it's with thermal, and so you're not going to be able to like really see through things with this thermal in this capacity, with this frequency. And so you can see the difference in his body temperature when he's next to other things that are like colder or warmer, but probably colder. But like image wise, you're not going to be looking to see through things just like a regular picture. You wouldn't be expecting to see through the weeds to see the guy, or else we would have had him right away. The same idea is you wouldn't be able to see through things. So if he just like laid still and didn't move, you're not going to see his heat signature because he doesn't heat up the ground around him. And so that's really the problem, is you don't heat up the ground around you. And if you just lay low and let stuff cover you, they won't see you. It's just can be easier to spot them if there's smoke or haze, or if he's got like camouflage on, you'd be able to see him with thermal better than visual. And so at night it works well, and it just works well to see the contrast of him against his surroundings better. Yeah, tree cover does block thermal imaging. Yeah, weeds, anything that you wouldn't be able to see through with a visual image, you're not gonna see through with thermal. Except for like when firefighters and stuff use thermal to see through smoke, because you can't visually see through the smoke sometimes, but you can clearly see the people through the smoke with thermal. Does anybody have questions or issues with, those are just like my thoughts about what they used. I wish I kind of would have been down there for the tech stuff. But that's my thoughts about what they used for that terrible, awful devil person. Otherwise, yeah. They said that it was the high temps that was causing issues to see that guy. They say they saw him because the temp drops. Yeah, because the human body is pretty warm against surroundings. And so that's what I was under the impression that the issue was, because the surroundings were so hot. You really couldn't see the contrast of him against things very well. And so they were very happy when the rain started and cooled off the surroundings, so you could see the contrast between him and the surroundings. But also, I don't think that because any heat waves coming off the ground or anything like that would be the thermal itself. So I don't think that I don't know, there could be other issues that heat causes with that kind of thing. But I think most of it was just the fact that he's hot and the ground and everything else is hot. And so you can't see the difference between him and a lot of other stuff, is what I thought. But I mean, there can always be, with things like thermal and sonar and things that like I am interested in, but haven't really got a chance to like work with. I like learning about why data works and why data doesn't work, and what you're looking at and why you're looking at it. That's the processing of information, and like how you're sending and receiving it and looking at it. That's like the part I really like about geophysics. And so I'd like to learn more about thermal, and but from what I know, I think that just the problem was he didn't stand out against the background. I mean, he clearly didn't stand out in life anyway. I mean, that's why he's mad. And I'm not going to do a short joke after I said that. So if you're hiding from heat-seeking technology, lie down on hot asphalt or something. If you're hiding from heat-seeking technology, I would say just lay low to the ground in some tall grass and let the grass cover you. Or, behind a tree, under a tree. Like, if anybody else watches live police chases from LA every once in a while, like I do, and they get out and they run, like, they get lost in the trees all the time, or if they run into, like, to the bushes or whatever, and they're like, we don't know where they are. And whether it's visual or thermal at night, just run towards trees. Well, I guess, like, if you're running away from people, just, like, run towards a congested area of people and blend in and walk away. Like, you're fine. But, I mean, that's not geophysics. That's just thinking too hard about this kind of stuff. Has anyone checked to see what the wind was like the day DeOrr vanished? Had it rained recently? Thinking if he fell in the water, if log hit him, he could have floated with the log, who knows? Oh, that's a good point. Like the weather. When he would have been placed in wherever he was, whether by somebody or by an accident or whether it was the water or the ground, knowing like the recent weather conditions right after it happened could maybe help you know if there was like flash flooding or something in the area and he's just like on the ground. He may not be close to where you think he was last seen just because he happened to travel with the water or something. So actually, that's a very good point to bring up. Like, what was the weather like right after that, when that was all happening? A couple of nights before they got him, it was foggy. He did hide in the cornfield. Yeah, he hid in the field, because you can't see through all the corn and the sorghum, I guess. All the crops, the nearby crops. You couldn't see through all that. Just like visually, if you couldn't see through the corn, you're not gonna see him thermally either, because he doesn't radiate light. He doesn't radiate heat. So you wouldn't have been able to see him if he was blocked by the fields. So him moving in fog, like when he wasn't surrounded by all the crops to hide in, he could easily run through the fog, because I know like with the visually it's hard to see, and then they couldn't fly in a lot of that bad weather, and I'm really not sure with thermal how good it is in fog. I know it can be used in fog very well, but I just don't know like that, because that was really foggy, so I'm not sure really where that ability ends. So there's a stupid drama channel on YouTube. He was saying everyone knows people hiding in the woods, sleep in trees. Cops failed because they didn't look up. He was on the ground though, right? Everyone knows people hiding in the woods, sleep in the... I stay away from drama because it confuses me. I was involved in trying to find some criminals, and the drone picked up a lot of deer in the corn, but didn't find the perp. Yeah, deer actually, I guess, have an extra ring of, like, when you look at them and they have all the colors on them, I guess deer actually have an extra color on them than people, and so that's why you can spot a deer against a person. Like, you can look and see if they have this, like, extra coloring on them, and that's a deer if it's got the extra coloring. Because you'll have, I don't know, I thought that was really interesting, and that's something I just learned, so I'm going to have to look into that. But apparently, thermal-wise, like, the signature of deer, like, not just, like, not just size-wise, but like I guess the thermal signature itself does come off a little differently when it's a deer versus a person, which I thought was really neat. What is most bothersome is that no articles of clothing, not even a boot, was recovered from baby DeOrr. Yeah. Right? Like, there was not, like, they don't have anything, so, with DeOrr, so, yeah, I mean, but everybody has to keep searching to check off the list of where you've searched and what next. And that's the hard thing, is that, like, you can kind of look when you know what techniques would work and what wouldn't in certain areas, and you can see, like, well, where would technology be in, like, a decade or something? Would it be useful? And it's like, I mean, we gotta really do this now. And so, but I think visually, I think some really good stuff that will happen in the next couple of years would be looking at the growth rate of things, where people have been buried, different plants, like different weeds and like the different ground cover kind of stuff. It would be a little bit different. Like, there's always clover in weird spots in graveyards. That's like going to be a whole new science, or it's already a science, but it's going to like totally progress so well in the next decade, I think, because people are really interested in solving some of these questions that kind of have been ignored. So I hope they find something. They try about using the creeks and the drainage tunnels. Yeah, you probably use the creeks, like, because if he's in the water, you can't see his heat signature very well. And also it's low, and so if there's a lot of trees and other things around the creek, you're not going to see him at all. And you can't see through the drainage tunnels and stuff, so that'd be a place for him to hide. Maybe it's the fat layer. Yeah, for the deer. Yeah, probably. I gotta look into that though. I thought that was interesting. His boots were 2 sizes big and should have came off quickly after running in that terrain. In my opinion, could be wrong though. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I just missed out on the discussion about the tactical farmer, and I know, the only person I can't identify when people are talking about is a tactical farmer, but I do know of the leaning cone, because I was very invested in that leaning cone for a little bit. So somebody will have to tell me which person was the tactical farmer. What does that mean? Yes. So, nobody grows sorghum around here. I thought about it, but there is little value to the wildlife. This has been fun. This is all I had. So I think that everybody behaved, right? We didn't have any weird boss or people come in, because I was so stressed I didn't have time to figure out how to click on people to help me. But I'm glad everybody showed up, and I'm sure you would have informed me if somebody was being super awful and terrible. Yeah, I know it was in his live show, but I don't know which person it was, and I'm having a little bit of, not a fear of missing out, I totally did miss out, so my fear has been realized, and I need to know. But that's okay, that's fine. I'm so tired right now, I'm just staring at the computer. Do I look crazy? I feel like I look crazy. Yeah, I'm going to add mod. Can I do that outside? Can I do that outside of this, or should I just do it now? Who's here right now? Ooh. Uh-oh. I clicked on something. I'm clicking on those 3 dots because I was told the 3 dots would do something, and I don't want to accidentally kick Copper Horse out of here. But nothing's popping up. I can participate. No, thanks. Oh, we're all invited. Anna's for Thanksgiving, sweet. I let my mom know because she was gonna do Thanksgiving, but I mean, we could just go to her place. Just a random farm on an ATV that Nick thought was. That's awesome. Wait, and we know he wasn't an agent, or he said he wasn't an agent. Okay, I'll just rewind. I'm trying. Nothing came up. Chris, I tried to do it now. It's the 3 dots next to you, right? Because nothing's popping up. I'm gonna end up accidentally blocking somebody doing this. I'm trying. Hey Zach, would you help me click 3 dots, please? My husband's gonna help me click 3 dots. His name is Zach, and he helps me when I know that I'm 2 minutes away from him throwing a computer.
Which one?
I think in the chat I'm supposed to be able to click 3 dots and make people mods. If the Copper Horse. Yeah, right? Like where is...
Maybe it's on
it makes me...
Maybe it's on
Oh, yes. Yeah,
it's not gonna pop it.
Whoops.
Here?
Yeah, I'm right there. Oh.
Oh, wait a minute.
I'm supposed to be able to click 3 dots.
Can I pause it?
Yes, you should. Because I do not like that girl. But her husband showed up, so she's fine. Or he's fine. Oh, yeah, so then... Yeah.
We're learning all about technology.
Yeah, if you want to click on the 3.
Oh, the heart's in the way. I can't. Ah, there we go. Add as moderator.
There we go. I was in the wrong screen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, command block, standard one. Yeah, just throw her in there as all of it.
There we go.
Thank you. That's my husband. He's contractually obligated to love me. He signed away his rights to, I don't know, be happy, I guess. There we go. I have 2. But I don't know, is Karen here? I'll add her someday. I was trying to do it through StreamYard, which I'm pretty sure Chris told me I couldn't do earlier. I just realized that. Ooh. Can I also make you my magnet fishing friend a moderator? You don't have to actually work. Does anybody else want to do it? I'd really prefer everybody be a moderator and everybody's just yelling at each other by the end and everybody gets kicked out. That'd be pretty great. Like it's me and 1 other person left. Okay, Karen's not here. That's fine. It's gonna start. Let's see. Oh my god, that heart is getting in the way. I added you as moderator. I hope you don't mind. I don't know how to how to DI, like how am I supposed to pronounce that? Because like I don't know how to pronounce it and I want to know how to pronounce that. I should probably just learn everybody's real name at some point though, that I talk too often. Okay, well thank you everybody, and I guess I'm gonna click end stream and I think everything will go well. One time I did think when I was doing Discord that I ended my part of the conversation in Discord, and I found out that it didn't actually end my connection to Discord, and everybody heard me talking to my dad. So I'm just gonna hit end screen, and I assume that you guys aren't gonna learn too much about me after that. Thank you, everybody, and yeah, if you could like this, that would be great. And if you have any questions or suggestions, because this was my first one, and I am open to, don't criticize me in a mean way, but if you have any suggestions. I know I didn't stare at the camera, but I was reading off my TV because I couldn't get everything set up in a different way quick enough. And also when I did, when I was in that house in between two movie documentary thing, when Steve from Ghost Hunters was interviewing me, we had a very hard time because I couldn't look at him when I was talking. I can't look at a camera. I can't look at people. I have to look around when I talk. It's bad news. I'll work on it. I apologize. Yes, the heart is in a terrible spot. I've just learned this. Yeah. Oh, you emailed Karen and you haven't heard back. I know she works late at night. I don't know. I hope she's okay. I mean, I'm sure she's fine. And that is okay that she wasn't here. But do let me know when you hear from her. I'm not smart enough to do anything on YouTube. Anyone's ever is better than I could do. I don't know. I mean, my husband, I hate to be the guy that goes, I had to get my husband to help me, but like literally this computer would be out the window at like somewhere around 5:30 a day if it wasn't for him. So it's really a lot of his effort too to keep me from throwing the computer out the window. Okay, bye everybody, good night, thank you, and yeah, comment, suggestions, or questions, or whatever. Bye bye. Wait, I don't want to end it lame like that, like bye bye. See you later.